Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at the free version of Cloudflare and how you can use it to improve the security and performance of your existing website. So I'm initially going to go over how you can set up Cloudflare and why you might want to set it up, but a little later in the video we're going to go through some of the specific settings inside of Cloudflare and how you can configure them, which will hopefully improve the security or the performance of your website. So real quick, what is Cloudflare? Cloudflare is a CDN, which is short for Content Delivery Network, and it basically caches your website and it can serve it to your viewers from various geographical locations. So if your server is hosted in the United States, for example, and someone is trying to connect to it from Europe, the content is cached on Cloudflare servers and then it is delivered to the viewer in Europe using one of their servers in Europe. So you're basically improving the performance by reducing latency and delivering the content from a closer data server. So from a performance perspective, that's one of the benefits of Cloudflare. Now they also have a ton of security related benefits and we're going to get to that a little later. So in summary, Cloudflare is a CDN that prioritizes performance and security, and it's something that you should look to implement on your website if you haven't already done so. So first things first, you have to purchase your domain. So there are various providers where you can purchase your domain, and I use Namecheap. That's not to say that you have to use them. You are free to use whoever you want, but you have to make sure that your domain is purchased, and then what we're going to do is we're going to connect it to Cloudflare. So go to Cloudflare's website, and then you're going to have to create a free account, and we're going to add a new domain. So in here, I'm going to enter WunderTech.xyz. I just purchased this because it was cheap. We're going to use it for testing, but this is where you're going to have to enter in your domain. After that, you're going to have to select a plan. So in specific, we are looking at the free tier of Cloudflare. That's not to say you can't upgrade. If you want to upgrade, you're more than welcome to. We're just going to be focusing on the free tier in this video. After that, it's going to scan through your current domain and it's going to find any of the DNS records that currently exist. So if you're using this domain already, you probably already have a bunch of DNS records. If it's new, you might have some, but you might not. So this is just going to run through, scan everything, and pull anything that it finds in. If you'd like to, you can add a new record or you can continue on and do that later. Now the next step here is it's going to ask you to enter in these name servers in step 2 onto your domain registrar. So wherever you purchase your domain, you're going to have to log into that account, and then you're going to go to the name server section and you're going to add these 2 name servers. Now this step is going to be different depending on the provider that you're using. For Namecheap, I just go into this section where it shows name servers. I'll enter in these 2 and then it's going to save. And it says 24 to 48 hours. It doesn't take that long. Probably takes about a half an hour or so, half hour, an hour. But you should be able to use Cloudflare after that. So when that's done, you can select done and then you're going to move on. So now it's going to bring you through the quick start guide. So these are a few basic settings. Once we finish implementing these, we're going to dive a little deeper into Cloudflare and look at some of the things you could configure. So the first thing is automatic HTTPS rewrites. So this will basically rewrite the URL from HTTP to HTTPS, and it's something that you want to keep on. The next thing is to always use HTTPS, so we want that on as well, and we're going to proceed from there. The next thing is minify. So this is basically just going to minify the HTML, CSS, or the JavaScript. And it basically just takes it, it condenses it, it removes all the comments, it removes all the blank space. It's supposed to improve performance. You are free to do this if you'd like. If not, you can move on. But we're going to look at some performance stuff a little later. The final thing is Brotli compression. So you can leave this on. This is basically just going to try and speed up the load times of your pages. So that is all of the basic settings. So while we went through and changed and configured some of that stuff now, you can always go back at a later time and make any additional changes that you'd like. So once that's done, you might get to a page that says complete your name server setup. The reason for this is because the name server changes that we made has not processed yet. So give it some time. If you refresh this page periodically, you should see at some point that Cloudflare is properly set up and configured. So we're going to quickly go through some of these settings. But what you're going to notice is that I'm talking in very general terms. And the reason for that is because everyone's setup is different. So you're going to have to take what we're going over today and kind of implement it based on your needs. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the DNS section. So similar to any other DNS section that you might have used on any of the other registrars, you can come in here and manage your DNS records. So I'll quickly talk through an A and C name record because those are most likely the 2 records that you'll use the most. So an A record points back to a static IP address. So if you are hosting a website out of your house, for example, and your external IP address is static, meaning it never changes, you're going to come in here and you're going to create an A record. And that's basically saying that it's going to point this name back to that static IP address. So if you don't have a static IP address, you most likely have to set up DDNS. And DDNS basically tracks your external IP address by a domain name. So for example, there is DuckDNS. I have a video on how you could set that up. I'll leave a pop-up for that now. But if you come in here and you create a CNAME record for the name www, what it's doing is it's pointing the URL www.wundertech.xyz back to the DDNS hostname that we put in the content section. So basically, if you're trying to host a website out of your house, for example, you're either going to create an A record that points to your external IP address or a CNAME record that points to your DDNS hostname, and it's going to tell Cloudflare that that's where it's supposed to direct the traffic. So the last thing that we're going to take a look at is the proxy status. So the proxied status, when it has the little orange cloud, it's basically masking your IP address or your DDNS hostname based on the A record or CNAME record. So if you do an NS lookup on your domain, rather than returning the IP address or the DDNS hostname, you're going to return Cloudflare servers. So no one's going to be able to find out what your home IP address is or what the DDNS hostname that you're using is. Now, the important thing that has to be highlighted here is if you're trying to get a certificate, meaning that you're using Let's Encrypt, for example, you have to ensure that the proxy status is set as DNS only. And the reason for that is so that Let's Encrypt can communicate with your internal server to validate that certificate. Once the certificate has been validated and you've applied it, you can come in here and change the proxy status back to proxied. So that's really the only time you're going to have to use DNS only. So that is the DNS section. We're quickly now going to go over the SSL/TLS section. So you basically have four options. You have off, flexible, full, and full strict. Off, you probably should never use. Flexible is encrypting the traffic between the browser and Cloudflare. So if you think of your users, there will be a certificate that is encrypting traffic between the user and Cloudflare, but it is not encrypting traffic between your origin server and Cloudflare. So that's why for the majority of people, you'll want to use full, and that encrypts traffic end to end. So basically you have the certificate that is between the user and Cloudflare, and then you have a certificate between Cloudflare and your origin server. Now the full strict is pretty much the end-to-end traffic, but it confirms that no one can bypass Cloudflare, and it's basically stating that your origin server can only communicate with Cloudflare, and that is all done by using an origin certificate. So the majority of people will probably want to use full here. So you'll still have to go through and configure, say, Let's Encrypt on your origin server, but then you'll be able to have end-to-end encryption. If you want to take it a step further, you can look into full strict and implementing that origin certificate. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is the firewall. So the free tier of Cloudflare comes with 5 free firewall rules. So you can implement those as you'd like, but that's something that will probably be different for everybody. The next thing that I want to look at is the tools section here. So you should probably turn bot fight mode on here. And this is basically just going to try and block any of the requests from known bots. This actually works really, really well on my site very early on. I was getting a lot of bot attacks. I came in here, flipped this on, and they completely stopped. So preemptively, this is probably something that you want to keep on. We're now going to look at the settings, and you can adjust your security level here. So the security level is what will determine if your visitors receive a challenge or not. Basically, this is the way that you can protect yourself against DDoS attacks. So if your page is being attacked, you can come in here on this security level section and put I'm under attack. And what it's going to do is it's going to challenge every single user that tries to connect to your page. And from there, with the logs, you should be able to try and figure out exactly where the attack is coming from and try and neutralize it. But in the short term, you can turn that on and it will protect your site. The default setting here is medium, and I normally leave that on as medium, but if you'd like to lower it or raise it a little, you're free to do that. The next 3 settings I usually leave as default, but if you'd like to increase the challenge duration, you're free to do that. So that is basically all of the security settings. They tremendously help, so it's something that you should definitely take a look at early on, make sure it's configured properly, and then monitor it periodically moving forward. We're now going to take a look at speed and caching, and this is going to hopefully help the performance of your web page. So under the speed section and optimization, we're going to go through some of these settings now. So the auto minify and Brotli we took a look at initially. If you'd like to change any of that, you could do that now. But at the bottom here, we have Rocket Loader. You can turn this on if you'd like. It's basically just going to improve the performance on pages that include JavaScript. If you don't have much JavaScript, you don't have to turn this on. But like I said earlier, these are all mostly personal preferences based on the way that your site is designed. Heading over to the caching section, you can select configuration. And this is what's going to determine how your site is cached. So like I said earlier, Cloudflare is a CDN. So what it does is it caches the static assets of your website, and it stores them, and it tries to deliver them from a data center that is closer to the user rather than having them connect back to your local server. So the caching level is actually very important here. So generally, I leave this as standard, and then the browser cache, you have to kind of determine this based on the amount of changes that you implement. So I can't really give advice for this, but you can either leave it at a few hours or even a few months if you'd like. It's also important to highlight that you can come in here and you can purge your cache at any time. So if you'd like to clear out all of the Cloudflare cache, you can do that here, or if you'd like to purge it for individual pages, you can do that as well. Now at the bottom, there's two settings here that you should take a look at. You have Always Online and Development Mode. So Always Online will try and keep your website up if the origin server is unavailable. So if your local server goes down for whatever reason, it will try and keep your page online as long as it can by using the cached versions. Development mode will temporarily bypass the cache, and it's going to allow you to see the changes in real time. So if you're making any major changes to your site, any development, especially for a development server or whatever it is, you should probably leave this on so that you're seeing the changes in real time. Just make sure that when you're done, you come back here and flip this back to off. So the last thing that we're going to take a look at is page rules. So by default, you have 3 free page rules that you can implement. So that could be something like forwarding all of your traffic from one URL to another. It could be something like caching your entire page. So this takes the cache and kind of builds on top of it, takes it one step further, and it will cache every single individual page, which can greatly improve performance. So similar to the firewall rules, I can't tell you what you should be putting here, but based on your individual needs, you can create page rules if you'd like. So the rest of the settings here, I generally leave as default. You're going to notice that we didn't go through everything, but for your own site, you might want to go through everything. But these are what I consider to be the most important points to increase the performance and security of your website. So the majority of the benefits here will be if you're hosting something like a WordPress website, either out of your house or even in the cloud somewhere. You could always put Cloudflare in front of it. But that's not to say that you can't use Cloudflare for your own home services as well. Cloudflare offers a lot of functionality for free. They do have paid tiers, and you can always look to upgrade in the future if you'd like. But for a free service, it's awesome. I don't know how else to say it. I've been using it for a while. I've been very happy with it. It's something I always recommend everybody uses. I have a tutorial up on how to host a WordPress website on a Synology NAS. I'll leave a pop-up for that now, but if you did implement that, this is something you should absolutely 100% without a doubt put in front of your website. If you're using a different CDN, that's fine. I'm not saying that you have to switch. I'm just saying that if you're using nothing, this is a great option. So that's a really high-level overview of Cloudflare. We definitely didn't get into all the settings, but if you have any specific questions about any of the individual settings that we didn't go over, please leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks, guys.